Company Commander Aarne Juutilainen became one of the most legendary fighters of the Winter War during the battles of Kollaa. However, the legend of the Terror of Morocco was overshadowed by violence, unpredictability, and alcohol. Aarne Edward Juutilainen's calling was to be a soldier. He stated that, in his youth, he could never have imagined any other career than that of an officer. The path to his dream profession was long and difficult, but during the battles of the Kollaa River, Juutilainen became the most legendary frontline officer of the Winter War. Juutilainen pursued his dream and enrolled in the cadet school. He was reportedly an enthusiastic and capable student, quick to learn and particularly skilled in solving tactical combat challenges. He was also athletic and resilient, excelling in baseball, skiing, horseback riding, and fencing. However, his lively and mischievous nature often got him into trouble. Due to partying and brawling, Juutilainen was expelled from the cadet school for a year. During that time, he served as a reserve second lieutenant in various military units, where he was expected to demonstrate impeccable conduct. After a year, he returned to the cadet school, but his time as a second lieutenant had not been without incidents. Restless as ever, his misdeeds soon reached the school. It was discovered that he had received 3 disciplinary arrests, leading to his permanent expulsion. Disappointed and just 4 months away from completing his officer training, Juutilainen resigned from the military 3 months later. After leaving the army, Juutilainen tried various professions, including working as a sailor, but none of them suited him. His restless nature struggled to find a fitting career. Eventually, he came across an article about the French Foreign Legion and decided to start over, continuing his military career in France. He signed a 5-year contract in Paris. The legionnaires were shipped from Marseille to Algeria, where their rigorous training began. The exercises and hazing under the scorching African sun were brutal, but Juutilainen performed well. Even in training, he found himself in fights and military detention. However, his fierce nature kept even the sadistic guards from daring to enter his cell with their batons. After basic training, Juutilainen was sent to Morocco, where the Foreign Legion was tasked with subduing the remaining resistance fighters in remote areas of the French-occupied country. His time in Morocco was spent partly in combat but mainly on tedious military duties such as guard duty, marches, construction work, and training. Even from Morocco, he wrote a letter to the commander of the Finnish army, Major General Hugo Osterman, inquiring about the possibility of rejoining the Finnish military. Osterman advised him to submit an application upon his return, after which the matter would be considered. The response was not encouraging, but neither was it a complete rejection. After completing his 5-year service in 1935, Juutilainen returned to Finland, where he was accepted into the Viipuri regiment as a second lieutenant. A tall man with rugged features hardened by African sandstorms quickly became a well-known figure in the regiment. Initially feared for his loud and demanding training style, he soon gained the respect of his subordinates through his fair leadership and dry humor. Service time was strict, but free time was left undisturbed. It was during his time in Viipuri that he earned the nickname Terror of Morocco. His conduct in Viipuri was exemplary until an incident after a grueling week-long exercise. Exhausted, he fell asleep in a corner chair of the officers' club. Some fellow officers, playing a prank on Juutilainen, who himself enjoyed practical jokes, tied him to a table with a cloth. Though harmless, the prank had serious consequences when Army Commander Lieutenant General Osterman happened to visit the club at the same time. A few months later, Juutilainen was encouraged to resign from the army. For the 3rd time, Juutilainen donned his officer's uniform in the fall of 1939, when Finland's reservist army was called up for extraordinary training. He was once again assigned to the Viipuri regiment, which was deployed to the Hyrsala Bend in Ladoga, Karelia. When the war began, his men's respect for him grew even more. The Terror of Morocco seemed utterly indifferent to enemy fire. He moved around the positions upright, yet harshly reprimanded any soldier who unnecessarily lifted their head above cover. At one point, he even retrieved a fellow second lieutenant who, disoriented by a mine explosion, had started running directly toward the Soviet positions. Juutilainen caught him just over 100 meters from the enemy lines and, under fire, managed to bring him back unharmed. After the initial battles, his regiment was assigned to defensive positions along the narrow Kollaa River. Juutilainen's company was given the most difficult sector, where the road crossed the river. His reputation grew rapidly as he repeatedly repelled Soviet attacks, not merely defending but launching ingenious counterattacks across the river. On many of these missions, Juutilainen and his men returned with war trophies, artillery pieces, machine guns, automatic rifles, and, as he put it, smaller junk. His unit became known for its strong morale and efficiency, often receiving reinforcements in the form of troublemakers and shirkers from other units, men who were known to stay in line under Juutilainen's command. Even conscientious objectors were assigned to his company, where they were simply ordered to take frontline guard duty, with or without a weapon of their choice. Juutilainen received many letters from admirers, and his name and face became well known. After being wounded in the hand by grenade shrapnel, his division commander sent him to a military hospital in Viipuri. There, he persuaded a familiar doctor to let him recover at home, allowing him to stay with his parents in Sortavala. However, he could not stay away for long. Impatient to return, he sneaked back to the front despite his injured hand. His absence had even been noticed by the Soviets, who used loudspeakers to ask whether Lieutenant Juutilainen had been killed, wounded, or was on leave since he was nowhere to be seen. Upon his return, he learned he had been promoted to captain. The battles of the Terror of Morocco continued in the Continuation War and the Lapland War. He carried the reputation he had earned during the Winter War, and his actions were closely watched. Juutilainen was at his best on the front lines, in the midst of battle. However, when he served as the headquarters commandant of the division, action and excitement were replaced by alcohol, which he consumed in considerable amounts. When agitated, he was a fierce man who bowed to no one. It is known that he even fired shots at the feet of his subordinates to reinforce his orders. But on the front lines, he took care of his men, was fair, and was respected by his subordinates. The continuous 10 years of warfare for the Terror of Morocco began in the scorching heat of Morocco and ended in the freezing cold of Lapland in the winter of 1944. After the war, Aarne Juutilainen worked as a warehouseman and sheet metal worker. He passed away in 1976 in Helsinki and was buried in Malmi Cemetery. His gravestone bears his name, birth and death dates, and the inscription, "The Terror of Morocco, Captain."